If you're in any way plugged into the science and skepticism side of social media, it's likely you've had a particular Carl Sagan quote come across your feed at least once. Every few months, it seems to go viral alongside captions like, "Carl Sagan predicted today's headlines," or "Carl Sagan describes the 2016 US election," or "It's scary how accurately Carl Sagan predicted the state of America today." The quote in question is an excerpt from Carl Sagan's 1995 work, The Demon-Haunted World. It's found just a couple of pages into Chapter 2, titled Science and Hope.
It's a foreboding I have, maybe ill-placed, of an America in my children's generation, or my grandchildren's generation, when all the manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when we're a service and information processing economy, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues. When the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or even to knowledgeably question those who do so. When there is no practice in questioning those in authority. When clutching our crystals and religiously consulting our horoscopes. Our critical faculties in steep decline. Unable to distinguish between what's true and what feels good. We slide almost without notice into superstition and darkness.
It's chilling stuff, isn't it? I mean, in many ways, Sagan's foreboding about America feels like a description of the state of America today. Here are a few points that stand out to me personally. Wealth and technological power is largely controlled by the super rich few, not the rest of us. Many of our government representatives can't grasp the issues just like many of us. And so many of us are so far removed from the knowledge required to question those in authority that we heap praise on temperamental, unqualified, abusive authoritarians while mocking the guidance of seasoned experts who have made careers of improving human life. Multi-level marketing schemes peddling snake oil are running rampant and preying on people in crisis. People are legitimately worried about 5G towers giving them cancer, and anti-vax conspiracies are so popular that some people think that a worldwide pandemic is just a front for the US government's mission of mind-controlling us all through a vaccine. It really feels sometimes like we're slipping back into darkness. So how did Carl Sagan predict all of this? Well, despite what plenty of viral posts about this quote have said, this was never intended as a prediction. This was Sagan simply expressing concern about the future, and if we read further in this part of The Demon-Haunted World, we see that he formed his concerns based on the events and attitudes of his own time. Let's take a look at the passage directly following the excerpt we already examined. The dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content in the enormously influential media. The 30-second sound bites, now down to 10 seconds or less, lowest common denominator programming, credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but especially a kind of celebration of ignorance. As I write, the #1 video cassette rental in America is the movie Dumb and Dumber. Beavis and Butthead remains popular and influential with young TV viewers. The plain lesson is that studying and learning, not just of science, but of anything, are avoidable, even undesirable. We've arranged a global civilization in which most crucial elements, transportation, communications, and all other industries, agriculture, medicine, education, entertainment, protecting the environment, and even the key democratic institution of voting, profoundly depend on science and technology. We have also arranged things so that almost no one understands science and technology. This is a prescription for disaster. We might get away with it for a while, but sooner or later, this combustible mixture of ignorance and power is going to blow up in our faces. Media influence was a great concern of his. Now, every older generation bemoans the vapid or toxic nature of every new generation's popular media, but I don't think the inclusion of this point was just an excuse for Sagan to say, "Back in my day, media was better." No, it serves to make a valid point. Popular media, in its attempt to garner as much immediate attention as possible, purposely caters to the lowest common denominator. In doing so, it propagates falsehoods far better than truth, and fosters dangerously short attention spans in its most regular consumers. In an age where we are increasingly dependent on powerful technologies whose basis is found in a body of knowledge gained from centuries of rigorous scientific research, widespread ignorance of or indifference toward that body of knowledge and research process could spell disaster. I mean, it could be well argued that scientific ignorance among both politicians and the general public resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans in 2020 alone. Celebrations of ignorance were unfortunately common in Sagan's time, and they've persisted into ours. Realistically, parallels could be found between the original passage in question and the state of America in any given year. So why, upon a Google search of Carl Sagan's foreboding, does it seem that this passage has received most of its viral attention in the last 3 to 4 years? My guess is that many of us are hearing what Sagan called the siren song of unreason a bit more loudly in the past few years, due to circumstances which have long been known to turn up its volume. To see what I mean, take a look at another excerpt from Chapter 2 of The Demon-Haunted World. For much of our history, we were so fearful of the outside world with its unpredictable dangers that we gladly embraced anything that promised to soften or explain away the terror. I worry that, especially as the millennium edges nearer, pseudoscience and superstition will seem year by year more tempting, the siren song of unreason more sonorous and attractive. Where have we heard it before? Whenever our ethnic or national prejudices are aroused, in times of scarcity, during challenges to national self-esteem or nerve, when we agonize about our diminished cosmic place and purpose, or when fanaticism is bubbling up around us. Then, habits of thought familiar from ages past reach for the controls. You know, I think it's safe to say that in 2020, our ethnic and national prejudices have been aroused. We face challenges to national self-esteem, and fanaticism has gone from bubbling up around us to aggressively boiling over. Of course, we're clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes. Our crystals being paranoid political and religious conspiracy theories, and horoscopes being the soothsaying of corrupt political and religious leaders. I mean, a lot of us do literally take to the pseudoscience of crystals and astrology, but you know what I'm getting at. We're living in a time so uncertain and seemingly perilous that even some of the most wonderful, caring, and intelligent people we know, our parents, our friends, our partners, are reaching out desperately for a sense of hope and security, only to find its cheap imitation in the form of pseudoscience and unreason. But the chapter we've been examining is titled Science and Hope, so I'd be remiss if I didn't discuss how Sagan said we should address the problem and find hope in reality with the aid of science. At the end of this chapter, he gave 4 reasons why he thought science should be conveyed to the masses both through educational institutions and popular media. 1. Science has proven to be a force which can lift developing nations out of poverty. Current scientific developments drive economies forward, and past developments are what allow our current civilization and economies to exist in the first place. This is why, Sagan mentions, so many science-based professions like medicine and engineering are, in American universities, pursued by people from developing regions. They understand that science can not only improve the lives of individuals, but of entire communities. 2. Science can be used to understand the dangers of all of our global innovations and technologies so that before we nuke ourselves into a permanent winter or pollute so badly that we destroy our own ecosystem, we can know the perils ahead and avoid them. 3. Science has a lot to say about humanity's biggest questions. Where did we come from? What is our nature? Where have we been? What's our future? What's the fate of our universe? Across the globe for millennia, mythology and metaphysics have attempted to answer these questions, but science can provide more reliable answers. Maybe science can provide us with a better understanding of our cosmic context than any other institution we've developed. 4. Widespread scientific values can lend stability as well as progress to democracies. Science respects no authority. It empowers anyone who learns it, not a select group. It encourages the free exchange of ideas, constructive debate, well-reasoned arguments, rigorous standards of evidence, and honesty. It can prevent us from being taken advantage of by hucksters. It can also show us when we've been kidding ourselves and need to make course corrections. While in the hands of a few, science can lead to oppressive imbalances of power, in the hands of many, it can empower and provide balance for us all. Understanding all of this can give us hope even in times as strange as these. The tools we need for a brighter future are right there, ready to be put to use, but unfortunately, as Sagan notes many times throughout the demon-haunted world, those tools are often inaccessible to many, and many who can access them forsake them for the immediate comforts of mysticism and pseudoscience. Allow me to show some optimism here, though. While science denial is very apparent in our culture, subcultures which value scientific thinking do exist, and they're becoming ever more accessible. In Sagan's time, if you wanted to learn about human evolution, for instance, you had just a few options. You could consult the limited relevant literature available at a public library, assuming you even have access to one. You could wait for a special to come on PBS, or wait for a lecture to be held within commuting distance. If you had a ton of cash to spare, you could find a university which taught courses on the subject, enroll, and move there to attend. Today, though, well, just find a stable internet connection and do some digging. If you want or need reliable sources curated for and presented to you, there are dozens of popular YouTube channels that do just that. Seriously, there are so many PBS-produced channels alone, all hosted by experts with relevant expertise, that I couldn't even name them all. From world history to computer science to ancient mythology to biology to psychology to quantum physics, it's all accessible to a majority of the developed world and a rapidly growing portion of the developing world. And you know one of the best things about all this? Being knowledgeable about these topics, being what plenty of people would call a nerd, is in some expanding cultural circles kind of cool. I don't see scientific literacy becoming entirely mainstream anytime soon, but because of the internet, reputable and increasingly diverse science communicators are finding increasingly diverse, highly engaged audiences. Watching instantly accessible educational videos for fun is just a thing that many young people today grow up doing, and I think that has an impact. By the way, I think that if it wasn't for Carl Sagan and Ann Druyan trying to make science education fun and accessible for everyone, even kind of a form of entertainment, I'm not sure that all of these channels would exist. Through their writing, TV specials like Cosmos, and even movies like Contact, Carl Sagan and Ann Druyan inspired a movement of sorts that I think we're still seeing continue today. I'll be honest and admit my own bias toward the effectiveness of online science advocacy, though. See, I didn't grow up with access to anything like the educational resources I utilize today, and neither did my family. As a result, I grew up as a climate change denying, academia hating young earth creationist. One of the only reasons I was able to find my way out of that is that when I was in college, John and Hank Green worked with PBS to launch YouTube channels that became popular. You might know them as SciShow and Crash Course. Their videos allowed me to take my own first steps out of superstition and darkness. So I tend to think that making science education accessible and even enjoyable to the masses, as Sagan championed, is a way to ward off the demons that begin to stir in times of fear and crisis. If you've been impressed by Carl Sagan's ability to describe the troubles of today far in advance, then take the time to learn about his proposed solution for those troubles. The siren song of pseudoscience will always be around to tempt us, but it's my intention to make scientific thinking just so commonplace that the demons of our past lose their grip, and darkness gives way to a little bit of hope. Thanks for watching. The Demon Haunted World might just be my favorite book, and when newer skeptics ask me where they should start reading to get a handle on how to identify pseudoscience, I always recommend it. I've found no other piece of literature more comprehensive or more moving in teaching the tools of scientific skepticism. Now, whether you take my next recommendation or not, please do take this one and read this book in some form if you haven't already. That said, if you'd like to listen to the audiobook, which is excellent by the way, I've listened to it multiple times just during quarantine, you can do so for free with a 30-day free trial from Audible. Just read this freaking book. There's a reason Carl Sagan has a place in all of my videos. Alright, thanks again guys. Remember to be kind to others in the comments, and until next time, stay skeptical.